Hey homebodies, today's conversation consists of topics that may be triggering, including mental health, gang violence, physical assault, crimes involving children, and suicide. Please be cautious as you listen.
I haven't even gotten out of the car yet, haven't engaged with anyone, and a BMW whips up beside me, and the lady driving it dives out of the BMW, starts hitting me, scratching my face. I mean, we were dead inside from what we were covering, like on the normal basis. That's the first time I cried ever. Like, I watched bodies get pulled out of rivers and stuff, and covered blood splatter all over train tracks. And really, what hurt the most was I interviewed the friends and family, and I interviewed the neighbors.
Hey, homebodies! Welcome back to the Introvert City podcast, where we discuss culture, media, and faith from the perspective of an introvert's complex mind. I'm Seth.
And I'm Carina. I love... Oh, sorry. You had more to say.
No, I didn't. I didn't have anything to say.
Okay, that was the intro. I love your... What's the word? Charades? Every time you do the intro, you go like this, or you go like this, and it's super entertaining.
Well, yeah, I guess it makes me feel more secure if I can move my hands when I talk.
No, but I love it.
How's your week?
Honestly, so we started school. I don't remember if the last episode we did, I was in classes or not, but school started this week, or not this week, 2 weeks ago, and I'm still getting into the groove of things, and it's really, really, really stressful. How was your week?
My week was also stressful, but for other reasons. But
Work reasons
that
you're still not willing to admit?
No, okay. My job can be pretty stressful. Yeah.
Guys, Seth will not admit what he does, and I'm waiting.
These people don't gotta know what I be doing for a living.
I'm waiting for you to reveal.
Okay, guys. I work in landscaping. Ooh.
I didn't think you were gonna do it.
Yeah. Oh, I did it just for you guys. Just for you guys. Is there another one on me? No, just for you guys.
Wow. Yeah, he's landscaper.
Yeah. It's been good, but there's definitely been like a lot of work and a lot of different stuff to do lately. Plus, I had to do quite a lot of driving this past weekend, and I also started school.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, it's a lot. I know. I was reflecting on the summertime and kind of looking forward to the semester, and now I just wish it was over again and I was back in summer. Anyway, I'm trying to connect to today's topic and I'm doing a bad job. Over the summer, I got a really cool opportunity with a friend of mine who was also in the same major. We're both communication majors. So we work in media and publishing and all that fun stuff. And we got the opportunity for our school to be in like some candid video shots. I don't even really know how to describe it, but we had to go out and like have a good time, and the videographer was going to come and record it and use it for school stuff. So we did that, and that was super fun. And then afterwards we went out to, the three of us, the videographer, me, and my friend, went to a cafe to get more shots and then just like kind of catch up and talk. And the guy who was filming us was talking about his career, and we were talking about media and that industry, and we found out that he worked in the news, and we were talking about it, and I was really fascinated with that because as a communication major, you're thinking about going in that route. And he was like, yeah, it wasn't what you think. And I'm thinking, oh, it must have been really biased because we talk about news bias all the time. And I'm like, oh, so was it unbiased? Like, what didn't you like about it? And the conversation took a completely different turn, and he starts telling these crazy stories about being like up front at crime scenes and running into problems with the cops and stuff. It was crazy. So I want to talk about all of those stories because we actually have that videographer sitting with us today in the studio. Hi, Hayden.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. I hope I
problem.
explained the situation correctly. Did you want to touch on anything I said or correct anything I said?
Yeah, no, that's basically what happened. We got reined in at a cafe and just started talking, and it was a good time.
We have some questions for you today, and we're kind of diving into that world. And I'm super excited, and I know you have a lot of crazy stories that I think our audience will really enjoy. But the first question that is essential to all of our guests that we always ask is whether or not you are an introvert or an extrovert, and how that plays into your life.
I think that's hard. I think I used to be a super extrovert. I would say now I'm mostly an extrovert. I think when you work in news and stuff, like we had to do man on the street and everything. So you're forced to interact with people constantly. So if you're an introvert, you're going to burn out really quick. And unless your news director doesn't make you do man on the street, then you're fine. But like you'll find a lot of people who are either closeted introverts or extroverts when it comes to that world.
Okay.
So like the introverts basically are like super extroverted at work, and then you can't get them on the phone when they're not working, and they're probably laying in their bed until the alarm goes off.
Okay, so we have some context.
Yeah, that would make sense. I guess in a lot of industries, you always think like, oh, this would be really weird for an introvert to work in, you know? Like if you have to talk to people like 24/7, how could an introvert actually work in a type of industry like that?
Right.
That sounds horrible. But
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
Mm-mm.
But I want to ask. So our first question to kind of get into the topic of today, we wanted to ask you what initially drew you into the world of crime scene photography, journalism, and how did your faith factor into that decision? If you want to include some of your testimony as well.
Well, I really wanted a job in news, and I specifically wanted to cover sports, and I got hired to cover sports. And within 1 week of covering sports, I was working and I was covering the Baltimore Ravens training camp. We got a notice that the person who covered weekend crime had no-showed, sent a text that they quit, which is very common. Very common. I mean,
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Towards the end of my career, when I was training people, I would train them for 2 weeks, and I would expect them to probably last another one. So, so they quit, and they said, Hayden, we need you to cover the weekend shift. And I said, okay, thinking that it would be a short-lived experience, and it never ended. So faith-wise, I didn't think I would be dealing with like heavy topics at all. You're constantly seeing like the worst of human beings all the time. I mean, it's towards the end. I mean, it was probably 2022. I covered a dude who went into his sister's house, stabbed. I don't know. I forget if the girl survived or not. Her 2 daughters, and killed her.
Oh my gosh.
Ran out. Stole her car, and then crashed into a school bus, right outside of Harrisburg. And you start to think like, what was the point of this? At one point I even stopped praying. I just was like, this is just the world. And then and also people don't like Christians a lot of times. And at least from my experience, like you just don't talk about it. I started talking about it with another photojournalist, and turned out we both went to the same church, different campuses. So we started going together, and then I got my reporter to go with me. And then I felt like, I might actually be able to live out my faith and do this. So it really, what kind of saved my faith was the fact that I finally got the courage to share it with people and be willing to face rejection. So
That's amazing. I bet it felt like a cognitive dissonance while you were in there.
Oh yeah. And I know this isn't true for most journalists. I mean, I hope it is true, but I know it's not. Being unbiased constantly, it's not natural at all. you want to be biased. Most people are biased. Like any journalist who says they're non-biased is a liar. The question is, you have to look at their body of work and say, okay, how much do they lean one way or the other? Mm-hmm. If you're supposed to not even like talk about your surface level viewpoints, how are you supposed to dive into faith with somebody?
Yeah.
And I think too, like a lot of people get into journalism, at least on-air journalism, because they want to be an on-air personality or something. So if you express your faith, you're really risking what your next career opportunity would be. I didn't necessarily care about that because I was a photojournalist, so I was behind a camera. Like, I'm not going to get attacked online or anything. My bosses constantly tried to force me to have social media, and I just refused. And one of the reasons is because I just didn't want to care what other people said.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when we were having the conversation a couple months ago, you had mentioned that you got into actually some dangerous situations. Did you want to kind of unpack that? How did that unfold? And is that common for journalists to get into dangerous situations?
Yeah. I mean, I can start with so there was probably the worst one where I got assaulted. I was at a murder-suicide. A son recently, either separated or divorced from his wife, had some mental issues, moved in with his parents. I guess he had a crossbow, and late one night shot his dad with the crossbow and then himself somehow. And I was told by my producers that the scene was cleared, and I was just supposed to go get exteriors of the house for you have different levels of stories. Like a lot of times if you go on a social media of like a news organization or something, you'll see ones without any audio, maybe just some text that pops up, but just like shots of exteriors, or like if there was a gang-related shooting, maybe some cars that have bullet holes in them. And then like one or two paragraphs.
Okay.
Well, that's what I was going to get. Not a big story. Like this was supposed to take 5 minutes tops. Mm-hmm. And I get there and I have my window rolled down. I haven't even gotten out of the car yet, haven't engaged with anyone. And a BMW whips up beside me, and the lady driving it dives out of the BMW, starts hitting me, scratching my face, reaches into the door, pulls the door open.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, what is going on? And she's screaming at me like crazy, and I had no idea who she was. I tried to de-escalate the situation. There was
just screaming or calling you names, or
calling me names, calling me bloodthirsty, a vulture, all this stuff. Like, you get this stuff as a journalist.
So she knew you were.
Did she think you were someone that you weren't?
No, she just thought I was sent by the news. Oh. I mean, I was driving a giant van that said CBS on it. So there was no missing who I was. Well, so she attacks me, and I end up having to push her away. I shut the door, start trying to roll the window up. She gets back in her car. She's like, tell me to leave. So I say, okay, I'm going to leave, but I can't back up because that's heavy traffic behind me. I'll get hit. So I say, I'm going to turn around. Well, I pull forward. She thinks I'm going towards the house again and tries to hit my vehicle with her BMW. And then eventually her boyfriend or whoever was in the car, tells her just to let me go. Well, it turned out she was the daughter of the victim, sister of the guy.
Okay.
And work wanted me to press charges. They wanted me to go out and get the camera and stuff. They told me take the rest of the day off, go to the hospital, get checked up. You need to file a police report. And probably the worst part about it is I do all of that, and then I check my time card, and they had switched my time card for those hours to my vacation time. And I was just like, I just got assaulted. I had to do all of this stuff, And now I'm like totally demoralized because I had almost no vacation. I worked every Christmas for 4 years.
Wow.
Like, because I wasn't allowed to take off. Like, bad stuff happens over holidays. It's one of the biggest things. I remember one of the stories I showed up to. Dude flew in from Florida with a samurai sword and butchered his whole family and lived in the house over the holidays. And I rolled up on that. The brother had showed up to the parents' house and found out that his other brother had been living in there with their bodies in the basement. And like, you're filming that.
Oh my god.
And I'm there. I'm there the day after Christmas. I had just worked Christmas. I was hoping to spend some time with my family, and I'm there. I'm covering this. I'm like, this sucks. It's like yeah.
So why is it the holidays? I mean, is it just because families get together and there's a lot of family tension, or what has your experience been?
I really think it's like seasonal affective disorder. I don't know what it is. I think a lot of divorces, a lot of bad stuff happens over the holidays. And like, people don't really talk about it much, but that's when stuff happens. And so I think for some people it brings up really bad things and resentment, and it's cold. And when it's cold, a lot of times you're inside, you're not getting as much social, stimulation, and you get in your own head. And then you start to devise plans. And if you like, I think this is too where like prayer comes in. Like if you have no higher power and you have nothing to kind of base your life on, like you get in that zone, you're in there. And it even happens to some Christians, but like you get in that zone and you decide you're going to go. I mean, when you buy a plane ticket and ship a samurai sword up, like at that point you're too far gone. Like you're in your own level of psychosis. But yeah, I think it's really just that. It's like wintertime is just a sad time. There's less daylight, seasonal affective disorder, and I don't know. It's just bad. You don't hear about it as much because you have your own personal stuff going on. Like a lot of normal people, like they're going and visiting family and they have friends, and like
especially in a small town like this.
Yeah.
You really don't hear about it.
Yeah, that was in York.
Wow.
Yeah, York City.
I want to ask, was there a point where maybe someone in your life brought it up to you, or you yourself were like, what am I doing, man? How can I keep doing this?
Yeah, there was. I had a full-blown mental breakdown after I had just covered a case. I came home and my wife was listening to a true crime podcast that was like too similar to what I just witnessed. And I lost it.
Wow.
And after that point, there was a rule in our house that if I'm there, there's no crime shows. There's nothing. There's not even news on. If I'm not working, there's nothing. And then I got assaulted. And then there was a shootout right by. I was covering a drug deal gone bad, and then a shootout happened on the same street as I was filming, and I'm just sitting behind a car waiting for it to go by.
Wow.
And I text my wife, and then immediately, like, when I got home that night, she just says, you need to get a new job. And that's when I started. But we were down so many people, I felt so guilty leaving. Like, I think we only had like 4 photojournalists at the time, and when I had started, we had probably 11.
Jeez.
So we were all covering so much. I hadn't even seen my wife like physically, like physically I was in the same room as her, but like I was asleep when she was there because I was pulling 1 a.m. till 1 p.m. shifts.
Oh, wow.
So when she got home, I was sleeping, and I had an hour-long commute. Like I had a take-home car, so I was commuting. So I would get up at a little bit before midnight, make a coffee, and head out. And then.
Yeah, I wonder what that was like for her, especially in the beginning. Like, I'm sure it must have been cool to say, oh, my husband does this, but then she sees how you're coming home. She sees how it's affecting you. Like, what was that like for her?
It was great because all of her friends thought it was the coolest thing, but it was tough for her. Like, I felt bad for her. Not like, and like when you're constantly thinking about that sort of stuff, like you're never in the moment. Like I was just totally detached half the time. And you're also like, you're always taking work home. So I couldn't really have like, I started to not be able to have like super normal conversations. And this sounds bad, but like I think this is pretty common. I know that guys would go to the bars and stuff in between stuff, but like we would just, in between live shots, certain days, we would literally just like plan our live shots out to where like a bar was. Mm-hmm. You're just like so depressed all the time.
So it was her. It was her who sat down with you, and that was the moment when you knew you had to move on.
Yeah. It was also me recognizing that like I just totally flipped out. And I'm like, this is like my one place where I'm like able to be not at work, and I'm at work still. And also, when you start to not be able to like handle things that are like playing out of like if you start losing your mind, at like if you get like super upset when you hear a podcast of any sort, really, like you need to take a step back. Like I used to tell people this because politics never really got to me, but like if you hear an idea that you don't like and you get angry and you want to put something online, well, maybe what you should do is you should take a step back, take a deep breath, and you'll probably get by it. But if you're constantly acting on like instinct and emotion, you have a bad problem, and I had a problem.
Yeah, actually, I want your perspective on this because true crime is very interesting, especially for women. I know me and my friends like consume it sometimes at unhealthy rates. And I was watching this one YouTuber who does true crime commentary. And there was a whole controversy because she took a little break from posting. I think maybe she was posting weekly and she had gone a couple of weeks without posting. And her followers were enraged. They were like, "You're not providing us content this week." And she came back on and she was like, "There's something wrong with you guys. Like, there's no crime happening and you guys are asking for crime for your entertainment." What do you think about that?
That's like the most engagement we got were on the most vicious cases.
I bet.
And like people, when I was, the one case that like I had my freak out about was the Mendoza case. People loved it. People were so excited. What's going to happen? It was happening live over multiple days. Tons of stolen vehicles, kidnapped daughters. Some bad stuff happened to the mom. She's the one who got the police involved. But like, that's what I was covering. And when it ended, me and the reporter I was with, I mean, we were dead inside from what we were covering, like on the normal basis. That's the first time I cried ever. Like I watched bodies get pulled out of rivers and stuff, and covered blood splatter all over train tracks. And really what hurt the most was I interviewed the friends and family, and I interviewed the neighbors, and I got to know these little girls and who they were as people. Like I'm starting to get like emotional thinking about it. But when I saw that car, like the police chasing, and I saw that car careen off into the ditch and just the inside was painted red, and I knew they were dead. Like you knew they were dead. Just the way the car went off. Everyone in that car was dead. The accomplice, the father, and his two daughters. Something in me just like broke. And when you're consuming true crime, you're getting that like, this happened, I'm not in it. But you forget all of the lives that are totally destroyed throughout the whole process. Like covering that stuff, the amount of people who just like the amount of lives destroyed by crime like that is so insane. The amount of community members I've interviewed over gang-related violence. And I was telling you before we started recording about when I was coming back up from Baltimore, and I covered that 13-year-old who got shot, again in New York. A lot of stuff happened in New York. I was like, I put so much effort into that story. And because there was only like one victim and it wasn't like, a big chase or anything like that, no one cared. And it's like, so when I hear people, like, I'm totally cool with anyone enjoying what they want. You know, I'm fine with that. But you have to, when you're listening to it, like you have to come back to reality and say, yes, I'm getting enjoyment out of this, but this destroyed so many people's lives, so many people affected. It's not just the people who died. It's not just the people who committed it. It's the perpetrator's family. It's the family of the victims. It's their kids. It goes down. It's a huge chain reaction. There are points where like crime, when you're reporting on crime and stuff, and you start noticing new security stickers, like you're in the same neighborhood. Something happened a week ago, and you see new security system stickers on doors and stuff. Like people are afraid to leave their houses sometimes, like it gets bad, but you're so detached, you're listening to it. You're like in an airport, just sitting there, like downloading another podcast to listen to on the plane. You're like, oh, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah. That's such an interesting perspective, because it's honestly a trend to like make those like TikTok, like this case doesn't sit right with me TikToks. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
But it very much is like almost it's like some of the most popular content on like Netflix is like true crime documentaries.
Yep.
Some of the most popular content on in podcasting is like true crime murder mysteries. And when you put it in that perspective where it's like you almost dehumanize the person and the people who were killed as almost like characters in a TV show.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was a culprit of this before like that stuff ever happened. Before like I got too deep into it, I used to listen to true crime. And then eventually like slowly you become like so dead inside doing this that you no longer like it doesn't really give you any like thrill or anything to listen to it anymore. And then like slowly over that point, like you build up this super hard exterior shell, and then like you have a case like what I just mentioned, and it just everything crumbles, and you're like, oh, this is awful. And sometimes I did feel like a vulture. Like I started after I got attacked, I started actually like being worried about what I was doing as well. Because I'm like, well, am I part of the problem? And then I would think to myself, I'm like, no, like this is news. Some people have to know about this. But you always have in the back of your head, it's like, well, technically we are profiteering off of people suffering.
Right.
So really, I was no better than a true crime podcast host.
Well, I don't know that you can put yourself in that category.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because it does make you think about, do people really need to know like every single crime that takes place, every single time somebody dies? Because then we get desensitized to it, but then we want more of it. And it's like, no, we just want to be aware. We have to know. It's like a weird mind battle that goes on. I'm curious if it made you more cautious of your surroundings, or like made you afraid of the crimes that you've witnessed happening to you or something.
I grew up doing martial arts and like fighting and stuff, and I did tournament fighting. I've always been pretty confident in my abilities to defend myself. But yeah, throughout it, I started carrying a gun and everything, when I was working, because I'm like, well, if I have a shootout going on behind me, I have like $20,000 worth of camera gear on me at any time. I'm a super big target. I'm in violent areas. I should probably be able to defend myself. Outside of work, I started avoiding like I know like I have a buddy who gets like really bad road rage. I covered too many cases of people killing each other in road rage incidents to ever get involved in that. Really what it is like there's a pattern to people becoming victims and people being the victimizer. And if you just don't engage in the things that those people engage in, like something I would always say, or well, I wouldn't say it, my reporter would always say it, nothing good ever happens after 11. So if you want to make sure you're not a victim of something, lock your doors and be inside at 11. And then come out in the morning, preferably after 4 a.m. So you have that sort of stuff.
Good advice.
Yeah. And also don't go into, like, if you have a gut instinct, I don't like this guy, or something's wrong, leave. Like there's so many people, like if you do listen to true crime or you cover this stuff, you start to realize there are so many people who are just so willing to go with a situation they're not comfortable with because they want to be polite, and then they end up dead. They end up chopped up in someone's basement, or they end up getting shot on a street corner. Or they end up getting some random person who never did anything bad's house shot up because they were walking by it. I mean, you really just have to, it's like almost common sense. Trust your gut, lock your doors, don't go out when the sun's down. And now that definitely limits your mobility. Like if you like going out at night, that's a risk you're going to have to take.
So are those things you've implemented into your life since working there?
Oh yeah. I'm in bed early. I wake up, I go to the gym really early in the morning, and I'm just a daylight. The only time I'm out really when it's dark is if I'm in my yard. Here's another thing I implemented. I live in the middle of nowhere on a farmstead, away from everything. And so if I'm out and it's dark, I'm in my backyard by a campfire. Or I'm leaving my house to go to the gym. And it's like, oh, well, that's so boring. It's like, well, I know what happens. So
is it difficult for you to just hang out outside with no greater motive?
I don't like being in crowded places.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like that.
That's such good advice. Oh my gosh, I love that. It's like the commonsensical type advice where it's like, oh yeah, you should probably close your shades late at night. You should probably, I heard someone say this. I think it was Corey Kenshin. The thing is Corey Kenshin chat. He's a YouTuber. But he said, if you leaving your windows open at night is like an invitation for someone, or like giving someone eye contact late at night is like an invitation to something.
And not only that, this is another thing that, okay, I have another story, but this is a really short one.
Okay.
Girl drops her ID at a Black Lives Matter protest that I was covering. I find her ID. I see the address on it, and I'm like, I could just mail it. I'm assuming it's her parents. She's like a college-age girl. I make a Twitter account. I look up her name, and she's private, so I just tweet at her. I go, I have your ID. I'm still in the city. Let me know if you want it back. Not only did she contact, like at the time I wasn't thinking much about it, but now I'm looking back on it. This was I don't know, sometime after George Floyd. Mm-hmm. And she just DMs me, says where to meet her. I say, big blue van behind this building.
Oh no.
Knock and I'll just come out and give it to you. She shows up.
And she just showed up.
Without friends.
That's crazy.
With no friends. Just by herself at night. Like this is probably 9 o'clock at night. So like, here's another thing. Don't meet people you don't know. Now, did I have good intentions to get her ID back? Yes. But like, if that was like my sister or my wife or something, like there's no way. Or if you're going to do something stupid, do it with witnesses.
Right.
Like bring a friend, bring a big friend, bring multiple big friends. And so like it's that. And there were so many times where like the victims literally geotagged their house.
What does that mean?
Like on Instagram or like other places you can tag a location.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
They would tag their house. And drug dealers would do this too. They would tag the location they're selling drugs at. I mean, I can't tell you how many police interviews I did where they just said, oh yeah, the criminal did all the work for us. They just tagged their locations and posted photos of bags of drugs. But victims do that too. You should not be posting unless you're at a place that's like, unless you're at Hershey Park, you should not be posting your location, because what happens is I can go onto your account and I can look at all the places you're tagging and I can have a big grid of where you go. And now I know where I can find you. So don't do it. I mean, it's just so simple. It's like, if you wouldn't want the creepy guy who you don't want to interact with, if you don't want him knowing where you are, don't post it online.
Yeah.
Criminals and victims both do this constantly. And it is like, it's almost infuriating when you're covering it because you're like, this person wouldn't have been dead if they were just a little smarter. And it sucks to say, but it's like, you have to take precautions.
Yeah.
But people don't think they're ever going to be a victim until they are.
I personally have never understood the tagging location thing.
Yeah.
I've never done it, except for when I went to London and I tagged London.
Oh, yeah, you can tag a big city. Like, if you're in New York and you put New York,
yeah.
Like, that's fine.
But, like, a house, that just blows my mind. Oh, my God.
I dox myself like that. That's so ridiculous.
Yeah, there were people who would just tag their house and then they got burglarized and bad stuff happened to them. And it's like, well, I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
You never deserve to be a victim, but you're opening a door that you can't close. Well, so. Yeah.
Have you worked on a lot of internet cases of like someone messages someone else pretending to be someone else and then it turns into something?
Not unless there was already like conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so that would be more of an investigative journalist would cover that.
Okay.
So they would cover fraud and other stuff like that. That's who would really. I didn't do investigative stuff. I just covered what was happening.
Okay.
So like the only time I would do any like real investigative work would be if it was an active crime, like the Mendoza case, where I'm going to the courthouse, I'm doing right to know requests, I'm filing like paperwork in order to get information that's active about like a warrant or something. Like, I filed a lot of freedom of information requests, but like there has to already be the information in the court.
Got it.
For that.
I forgot how many areas under the big umbrella of journalism exist.
Yeah. Like MMJs, multimedia journalists, like they basically are one-man armies or one-woman armies, and they go out, a lot of times they're like straight out of college. They go out and get smaller stories or a lot of stories throughout the day. And then you have your like reporters, you have like I covered a lot of crime because there was a lot of crime, but I was technically a general journalist. So I would cover politics as well, or a general like photog. Basically, photog is photojournalist. And you don't take photos. All you do is video. It's just kind of, but you have like that. And then you have your reporter, but you have like specialties, and then you have like your hosts and all that, and anchors. But yeah, there's so many different umbrellas and different specialties, and they all pay terrible. So don't do them unless you want it on your resume. Looks good on your resume, but I would not make it a career.
Yeah. So that moment, you have that conversation with your wife, and you realize that it's time to leave this type of life behind. Do the next steps look like for you?
Next steps look like me applying to a bunch of different jobs, either not showing up for the interview because I was working, and then having to try and get a new one, which never worked out. They just think you bailed on them. But when you work weird hours, you're trying to schedule them, but you get called in. And when you're down so short, like we were so short-staffed, I would just get called in randomly. And it's like, well, now I can't do it. Or going to job interviews and realizing like, oh, the pay is terrible or what. People don't want to pay artists. That's the biggest problem. So like once you're an artist, you have to like hold true to like what you believe your value is. And if you're a video person or a photographer or a painter or a graphic designer, you really don't want to take a step down in pay because that's what the next person's going to value you at. And then you're going to be fighting to get back up to where you were. So, it was struggling with that. And it was also a few other factors of like, you get addicted to it. Like I wanted to leave, but I didn't want to leave.
Okay.
And so like I think a lot of it was just genuinely making excuses to stay. And then eventually I get this call. One of my buddies got out. We always called it getting out. And we would have like, I still meet with him every Tuesday for breakfast. We're really close, but he got out and he found me a way out. I never applied to work here. I was told that they needed someone like me and they wanted him for the position. And he actually said, I think you're looking for a photojournalist. And he said that I know someone who would be better.
Wow.
And
oh, that's cool.
They contacted me and gave me what would have been his job. And he got a different job that fit his skill set more. Like a journalist and a photojournalist have two totally different skill sets.
Yeah.
And they didn't need a writer. They needed someone who could produce videos. And that's a journalist is like a writer, basically. Someone who's just really skilled at crafting a narrative.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was pretty, he also had video skills. He has video skills, but they're just not like as developed. So yeah.
Before our next big question that we have, I just want to touch on what you said really quick about artists and payment and becoming it. At a certain point, if you're doing what you love as your entire career, it becomes not what you love anymore. And very, I don't know if objectified is the right word, but it's like you're just pushing it out and it's not creative anymore and it's not authentic anymore because it becomes work. And that balance I know is really hard for even people like us trying to do a podcast on the side, you know?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people will relate to that.
Yeah.
For sure.
And something about that too is like once you find that your passion for something is dying, it's dying because it's getting stale. So you have to amp it up. Yeah. Like I just did a backpacking trip with my wife in Banff National Park in Canada. It's such a beautiful scenic place. And you would think, okay, what do you want? Well, you want to bring the best camera, preferably like a mirrorless. You want multiple lenses. You want like maybe you want to do landscapes. You're probably going to want to do portraits. You're going to want to like really just anything you can use to document it. Okay, you're going to want to bring your lav mics because you're probably going to want to shoot some cute videos to post on social media, that sort of stuff. Well, I decided I was going to bring a film camera with a vintage 28 millimeter lens, and I was going to shoot everything on 35 millimeter film. I started doing this when I felt like photography was like, photography, I don't want to do it anymore. So I dusted off my film camera and I started shooting all film on all of my trips. I've been to Europe multiple times with just my film camera. I went to Canada. I just got back from Cuba a few months ago. I took my film camera to Cuba and I just documented downtown Havana and a couple other places. And that's what you do to spark your love. You don't just like make it harder is basically what I'm saying. I'm shooting,
challenge yourself.
Yeah, I'm shooting on all manual. I'm bringing a light meter around. I'm like clicking it and trying to figure out what the perfect exposure is. And then I have no idea. And it's like over $1 per shot. You only get 36 per roll. You only want to bring so many rolls. And half the time they'll get destroyed if they don't let you hand check them. Because if you throw them through the x-ray machine, they get destroyed. So you're risking it. And that risk is fun because I have no idea what I got until I get my film back. And that's exciting. And so like if you're an artist who's making it your career and you find it stale, make it harder. Make it as hard as possible. I have cinema cameras, multiple Sony cinema cameras, and I have found myself shooting on like an antique little handy cam for fun. And my like not on actual paid gigs, never do that, but like just when I want to make a video, just make it harder. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good.
That's interesting. I wanted to ask real quick, how would you say overall that your faith played a big part into a lot of this as you kind of grew out of it and as you are now?
My faith is like growing every day. I love it. I think that starting with inviting people to go to church with me, then it got me more involved in church because now I have like I'm bringing people in. And then I decided, well, and this is a tip for any guys, I wanted a kid. So I said, well, before I have a kid, I should probably know what I'm doing. So I started volunteering in kid ministry with kindergartners, and now they're like 3rd and 4th graders. Wow. And I'm with the same group, and it's fantastic. So like what really what really started building my faith like throughout it was like my faith basically hitting like existent but almost non-practiced the whole way up till now, where I have like my daily Bible time and I'm volunteering at church and I have like a big Christian community. Well, like it's fantastic. I mean, I feel so much better in life as my faith has like flourished. I have seen myself making better decisions because I'm actually utilizing my faith the way it should be and not just leaving it on the back burner, but also just enjoying life more. I think people forget when at least like in my previous career, like when you're living in anxiety and like you're in a panic state all the time and the world is doom and gloom and it's always the end of days, you know, like that's no way to live. It sucks. And when you're not praying or you're not falling back on your faith, you're really falling into an endless void of suffering. Like I had such bad insomnia. I was having like panic attacks constantly and everything. And so even while working in news and building my faith back up, like there were significant changes in my life that almost took effect immediately. One of them was like, I decided, well, I don't think I want to go to the bar while I'm working anymore. Like, and that sort of stuff. Like those are big things because basically everyone I knew was doing that, at least anyone doing what I was doing. And then it's like, oh, wow, what? You don't want to do that anymore, man? Like I remember I was there. We were there at the bar after I think it was our last shot of the day. It was 6 p.m. and the ABC guys walked in. And so it's, you know, it's us, ABC, and then NBC came in. So all the news guys are at the same bar because we were all covering the same thing. It was a high schooler got shot up right near the mayor's house and like a drug deal going bad. And we're just all there and we're all just hanging out talking. And I'm like, all of us suck. You know, like we're all not good people. And so like when my faith started to really prosper and I started to come back to it, like I felt myself not want to do that and not want to commiserate in our insanity anymore. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, that's how it grew. Like it seriously grew from me just planting the seed of asking people like, hey, will you go to church with me? And into the point it is now where I'm engaged in my community. I'm donating. I'm tithing. Involved. And not only that, but I'm just a better person. And that's the biggest part. I think it starts with really just accepting that you're going to let Christ lead and then making biblical choices. And then it all kind of falls into place.
Yeah. That was very well said. That's great. So we can kind of close on this last question. And it is, what if you were to give advice to other people in high stress or trauma-inducing professions about sort of maintaining your values, taking care of your mental health, and seeking purpose and not getting caught in that void of suffering, would you like give any advice to them?
Here's the steps that I took, and it worked really well. First, get a counselor and be honest with them. That was the first thing to like becoming normal again. You're not normal. Everyone else isn't constantly stressed out and worried and nervous around other people. So realize that. Go to counseling. Get your community back, because most likely at this point you have pushed yourself away from everybody who's not doing your job or like working with you. So get your community back, reach out to your friends, hang out with them, talk about normal stuff. Stop talking about your job. It's not that fun. And so yeah, build community or find a community or bring it back to life, because you probably let it die. Get counseling, and then start doing a devotional or something that grounds you. It could even be like I did like sound it's not hippie new age stuff. It's normal, like sound meditation where like you walk. There's like a guided meditation thing where they say you're walking on the beach and this, and you're hearing the waves crash, and you hear it in your headphones.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm not at work. I'm at the beach. But like do that, like calm down. And also counseling will help with this, but find things that aren't like, find what stresses you out. For me, it was like the true crime podcast and other stuff like that. Like that stuff stressed me out. And if people around you are doing it or whatever, ask them, hey, stop this when I'm around. Like if I start saying this, just check me. Just tell me, hey, we're not doing that right now. But yeah, it comes down to counseling in community and your church. Lean into whatever, wherever you're going to church, and just have people know what you're going through. Yeah.
That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for having me. Thank you so much for being willing to share. I think, first of all, this doesn't get talked about ever. Like I mentioned in the beginning, when people think about the news industry or the media industry, we think of, oh yeah, we all know it's biased, whatever. We don't think about the mental health of the people involved who are literally witnessing these crimes and having to report on them every single day and see them firsthand. Like I'm imagining being in your situation, and it's stressing me out, So I think it's amazing that you're so willing to talk about it and to kind of educate people about it, and to, like I said, share your experience. I think a lot of people will find healing in that. So thanks for being so willing.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Seth, any final thoughts?
No, just great, really great
insight.
Waiting for it for a second. Reverse. Thank you for coming on the show. It was really great.
Yeah, no problem. No, it was good.
No, it was really great. I really loved hearing about the honesty there, and I loved hearing that. I respect your blunt honesty. I really respect that. I think that's very necessary especially for a past that you've had and the type of career you've had. I think it's very good to have that type of honesty and bluntness in a society where, people do take their lives for granted. People take their freedoms and their safety for granted. So thank you.
Sugarcoating stuff never helped anybody. You just gotta tell it how it is in a kind and respectful way. It's true.
And we're glad you got out. And you found healing, and now you're thriving at LVC, and for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope that basically anyone else who's in my situation realizes that they should get out.
Yeah.
And here's another thing. If you're trapped in a career, you can get out and not go homeless. Like you could find a new job, and that's it's always nice to know. There's always a new gig. You might have to move.
Yeah, there's always a way, even if it requires sacrifice. I think that's true. Well,
yeah,
that's a wrap. That was, I've never said that before.
We don't talk like that.
Yeah. Well, Hayden, are you on socials currently? Where can people find you? Have you done other interviews before?
You cannot find me anywhere.
Really?
I am nowhere. I have no social media. You might be able to find me in the Yellow Pages. I do basically everything behind the scenes. So, and I keep my name off of things.
Okay.
That must be nice.
It's super nice. And I'll show you this.
No
really
digital footprint.
Not only that, but I am very hard to communicate with. If you see how many missed things I have there.
Oh man, that's stressing me out. Please stop.
I'm glad I looked at I'm glad I looked at your texts, because there's a pile of them that I haven't seen.
Yeah, I'm glad too. Well,
again,
unfortunately,
thank you again
we have
for coming
social
on
media.
We do have social media.
We should delete it now. I feel convicted.
We should.
Low-key.
You won't be able to find us on Instagram at the introvert _ city, at the introvert _ city.
Yeah.
I was trying to make a good joke there.
You said it right.
You can find us at the introvert _ city. You can find me at its _ DANEYL. Find her
at Carina, CARINA _B04. We're also on TikTok and Facebook,
and follow us and subscribe. It's free. It's free. And please like and click the bell too.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being here, guys. And per usual, we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Bye, homebodies.
Bye, homebodies.